Okay, so on Sunday, what we discussed, no, we just had a look at how we can create our own APIs and use the JSON server to kind of host those APIs. So I will share the recordings and you can have a look at those things, right?
Okay. Yeah,
And
sure.
so let me go through the topics for the coming session. So it is around the variables, like what are the variables in Postman, and why on very first place why we use the variables in Postman, and then what are the types of variables and their scope. So we have a lot these different types of variables: global, environment, collection, local, and data. So what is the use of them and what is their scope, like where these variables can be accessible. And we have some Postman snippets around variables, so we will have a look on those things as well. And then we will see a scenario of API chaining. So what is API chaining and how we can achieve this, we will have a look. And we will have a look at what are curl commands in Postman and how we can convert any request into a curl command and vice versa, and where to so many times the developers, what they do is that they share the curl command, right? So how we can use those curl commands and get the request into Postman. So we will have a look. And then we will have a look into the data driven testing part, like how we can drive data from CSV file or JSON file and use those data in our API testing. And also we will have a look at what are the different authentication in Postman. And we will use one of the sample APIs to verify the authentication. And there are various authentications. We will have a look into what these things mean on a high level. And we will have a look at how we can achieve a bearer token authentication. So these are the things which we have planned. So let's start one by one. Okay. Okay. So yeah, first thing, Postman variables. So let me just write down what are variables. So it's simple. Uh, Variables are used to store some value. Okay. And values might change from time to time. Might change from time to time. Okay. So this is just what is a variable. And I think you must be aware of what a variable is, because in Java or some programming language, we define something like int, let's say a
Yes.
equals 10, something like this, right?
Yes.
So here, what this particular is, this is a variable name, a variable name. And this particular value, this is the value which the variable holds value. So today maybe it is 10, so tomorrow I can just change it to 20. So this is the basic overview or the use of a variable. And let's see in Postman. So how we achieve these things in Postman. So in Postman, variables are defined as key and value system. So what key will hold is the variable name, and what value will hold is the value of the variable. So it's quite similar over here in any other programming languages or in Postman. So this is for Postman, right? So here we store it in a key and value format. So if we want to store like a variable named a and a value as 10, so as a key value pair, we can write a as the key and 10 as the value, right? So this is how we define the variables in Postman. So we will have a look into this, how we can do these things. So this is just an overview of variables. And the first thing is that why we use variables in Postman. So we will have a look into a use case, and then we will get a better understanding of why we use the variables. So I will just open my Postman and I will just go to any of the collections. So what I will do is that we have this get, post, put, and delete request, right? I will try to get the URL of each of these requests. So let's say this is get, right? and this is the URL. Similarly for post, this is the URL. For put, this is the URL. And for delete, let's say this is the URL. Okay. So one thing is that we will have to check what is the common thing which these URLs have. So basically the server name or the host name is a common thing. So what we can do is that we can just get this host name and we can store it in a variable. We can store it in a variable. Because what happens is that, let's say if today the host name is this request response.in, but maybe let's say tomorrow the uh, let's say the host name changes to dot, let's say uh, okay, so let's say it changes to .com, right? Okay, so let's say tomorrow some of the developers develop some code and now the server is hosted on this particular domain .com. Then if we don't use variables, we will have to go and change the host name in each and every URL, right? So if tomorrow from request.in the host name gets changed to request.com, so these collections, these APIs won't run. In that case, in order to get them into action, we just have to make .com amendment over here in all the request. So this is one of the bad practice, like we can't go and keep on changing each and every request. So a better thing will be we will have to store this particular host name into one of the variables and use that variable in all these requests. So these requests will look like, let's say for get, we will have, we can define a variable. So define a variable. We can just tell that URL is this particular value, right? Just a second. Okay. We can just define a variable name with URL and this is the value, and we can go and replace the complete URL for these requests as a variable. So we can, what we can do is that we can tell, just a second, it's URL, so it's kind of taking time over here. No issues. We can say that for get, we can define the URL as URL variable name and then all the parameters like API, users, to, and slash. So yeah, so this is how we can define the new format of the request. So now if tomorrow the URL changes to some other thing like request response.com, then we will just have to update the variable parameter and all these requests will get it from the variable itself. So this is one of the use case of variables which we can do in Postman. And also variables are used for data driven testing. So basically I will just write down the advantages of using variables, or just why we use variables in Postman. So one will be to reduce rework, right? If some URL changes or if something is changed, so we will just have to update one particular variable and all the things will get updated simultaneously. So this is one thing, to reduce work or to reduce rework or to save time. So these are the things. And the other thing is that to achieve API chaining. So we will have a look at API chaining in the further sections. So these two things are the main primary thing for which we will require variables in Postman. So we will try to look this into action in Postman. So let's see what are the types of variables. So let me just do one thing. Let me duplicate this thing. So you can, for duplication, if you want to make a duplicate collection, you can go over here and just click over here, and we have an option to duplicate. You can just click over here. So what is, it will just create a copy. So now let me rename it as a variable demo. I'll change the name. Okay. And also let me remove some of the test cases as of now, so that we just have the variables. Okay. Okay, so now let's see what is a global variable. So these are the types of variables. Just try to remember it: global, environment, collection, local, and data. So first we will try to see what is global variable. So first let me define something over here. So global variable, it will be used. So first let's have a check at what is global variable. So now, okay, to create a global variable, right, what we can do is that just you can have a look at this particular button. Here we have a environment quick look. So you can just click on this particular button, and here we have two things: environment and global. So in order to define global variable, go to the global section and just add it. And now it will just, this pop-up will open, and it will just suggest you to type the variable name and the values. So let's say I want the variable name as URL, and I want to give a value to this. So let the value be this host name. Okay, URL, and okay. So this is the variable name URL, and this will be the value which I have stored in this variable. So now we can just go ahead and save this. So post saving it, when you go to the environment lookup, you will see that variable has been created over here with the name as URL, and these are the values of the variable, and this is a global variable. So global means this particular variable which we have defined is accessible throughout the workspace. So throughout the workspace, it means that wherever we go in this workspace, currently the workspace is my workspace. So if I go to any of the collection, any of the request, or anywhere, I will be able to access the variables defined under the global section. So this is one thing, like global variable. I will just write down over here. It can be accessed throughout the workspace. So just these are the important things which we will have to keep in mind, like what is the, and this is nothing but the scope, or the just the scope of the variable until which it is accessible. So if a variable is declared as global, its scope is inside the whole workspace. So any collection, any request, we will be able to access that variable. So currently what I will do is that we have this variable created, and we will use it in these particular request. So one more thing. To use a variable, we will just have to do one thing. We just have to use double curly braces and just use the URL. So I think, just let me have a look whether some variable is still there. Okay, global. Okay, right. Okay. Okay, so now what we can do is that we can just remove this and use two curly braces. And so this is how you will be able to access a variable. To access a variable, we will have to use two curly braces and the variable name. So this is how we can access a variable. So this is the two braces and URL. So this is the variable name. And once it is correctly accessed, you can just hover your mouse to this particular location and it will provide you all the details, like what is the value of that variable. So now just save it. And if we trigger this, then what will happen is that it will just go to the server and give us the response. So, and if we check the console, so here it will give all the details, like it is hitting this particular URL. So for this particular request, all these values are coming from the variable, right? Similarly, we can go ahead and replace these as well. So this is how we can use variables in Postman. Let's see, each and every request is getting triggered. So basically it's taking the value from the variable and amending it with the rest of the parameters, and it's hitting the server. And this value is coming from the global variable, which we have defined over here. So this is one thing. Yeah, okay. Yeah. So save changes. So here we have successfully did the implementation of variable in each and every request. So now let's say tomorrow, if the let's say if the URL changes, right? So we don't have to touch our APIs. Instead, we can just go to this particular place, and here we can just go ahead and edit this particular variable, and we can say that now the value has become the server is now hosted on this particular location. So from .in, if it becomes .com, we can just go ahead over here and change it. So now if you just save it,
Avinash,
yeah.
what is the difference between initial value and current value, Avinash?
So it's
Was it
it's the same. Like if you provide any value over here, no, it will get copied as a current value. So it will have a kind of a it will just copy the thing over here. So whatever the initial value means what was used in the very first place. And current value, so it's regarding some kind of a sharing. So if I hover over here, initial value is shared with your team when you share the variable in a collection, and current value is used when sending the values whenever. Okay, the thing is that if let's say tomorrow I share this collection to a team member, or we just share it to someone else, so whatever we will have over here, right, the initial value, so that will be shared with that particular person, but this value will not be shared. So this is the main basic difference over here.
okay?
Okay.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. And so now if the this path has got changed, we can just go on this particular variable, we can change it and save it. Now if we try to hit any of the request, so it will use the path which we have changed. So now it is giving all the errors, the reason being that that path is not supported for this API. But if we check the console, then so yeah, if we check the console, it is now hitting request.com API. So this is what is the main function of the variables. I will just again change it to a correct value. I will just make it .n, then save it. Okay, so this is the global. Again, if I have defined the global variable, and again I can go to any of the collection, like if I go to this particular collection, right? And over here, if I try to use the variable, then I will be able to access it because it is a global, and see, it's going for the proper request to the server. So here also we are having a look at these particular values. So basically, and the scope is global. So if a variable is set as global, then anywhere in the collection or anywhere in the workspace, we can use that particular values of the variable. So this is for global. And then we have one thing called the environment variable. So let's say you are aware that in testing world, we have various environments, like we have a dev environment, we have a QA environment, and let's say we have a prod environment, right? And now let's say, and also what happens in the, let me save these things. Yeah. Okay. Let me go to this particular location. Just copy this thing. So in testing, we have various environments, dev, QA, and production, and every environment will have its own link. Like in dev, it will be something of the sort dev link. In QA, the link will be different, right? Let's say QA, and in production, link will be different. Let's say prod. So if we are trying to test any API on these different environments, so a better approach is to define some environment variables in this case. Okay, and let's see how we can do that. So you are aware that in testing we have these different environments, and generally the endpoints will be different for all the environment. So development environment will happen at some particular path. Then the testers or the UA or the QA team, they will get a different path to initiate their test cases, and production has a different URL to access. So in these cases, there is an approach in Postman, like what we can do is that we can go to, currently it shows no environment. So we just have to click on this environment quick look. And here we have a section called environments. So just we will have to go ahead and like what we did in the for the global variables, we will just have to click add, and here the environment page will open. So let's define first a dev environment. Let's say this is a dev environment, and whatever the value, we will just put a let's say this is URL for dev. Uh, just use underscore. Okay. And let's say this is the dev link which we want to use, right? Okay, and just save it. So this created one of the environments. And when you again go back to the environment section over here, you will see a new environment has been created for dev. And to use this variable, it's simple. It's the same thing, like go to this variable section. Let me just remove the global variables as of now. Okay. So now just go to the section over here and see, as of now, it's not getting what we mean by this URL, because as of now we have just deleted the global variable, and Postman is not having a knowledge of what we are referring to the variable as of now in the URL section. So to get this particular thing, we just have to switch to the environment. Like in dev environment, we have defined the variables, right? URL dev. So just switch to that environment, and now just use the name what we had written over there. It was URL dev. Okay. So now it got a reference of what particular variable we are talking about. And now if we hit the send, it will, currently it's giving an error because this link is not valid. So that's the reason. But then if we check the Postman console, it's all the requests are going to the dev environment. So this is how we can define some variables and switch to the particular environment. So I will just go ahead and define some more variables over here. Let's say we put up a new environment. So for that, again, click on over here and go to new environment and just click on the lookup and add another environment. So here, let's say we have a QA environment, and let's say it's a URL for QA. And let's use this variable, this value over here. Okay. And just save it. Okay, so now we have one more environment. And if we want to test the things in QA now, we can just go over here and switch to QA environment. And now we can just, so you can see this URL dev is not resolved as of now, because this particular variable was defined for dev environment, and now we are in QA environment. So we can only access the QA things over here. So if I use a QA, then it is successfully getting all the links for the QA environment. So this is one thing. So also this environment variable, it's also accessible everywhere in the workspace. So let's say if I want to go to this particular collection, right? And I want to access the environment variable over here, I can do that. So here you can see you have a URL QA, and E stands for environment. So just click it and send it. It is accessible. So here also the scope is throughout the workspace. I will write over here. Scope is throughout the workspace. Okay, so this is also done. So are you also clear for the environment variable, like why we use it and how we are setting up the things for this?
Yes, Avinash. Mostly while doing testing, we have not used these things. We'll do testing manually and we'll go to automation immediately, but we
Okay.
won't set the variable. It's clear now, right now, how to set
Okay.
the variable.
Okay. So uh, just keep in mind that for global and environment, the scope will be throughout the workspace. And why environment is used? Because we might have to test sometime, like we are testing in QA. In QA also there are various test sections, like sometimes you will have to test in a test environment. Sometimes you will have to test in, let's say, pre-prod or UAT
Yeah,
environment,
UAT, yeah,
right? So in
yeah,
these
it's still
things,
UAT.
the the what you say, the path will be different for these environments, and that we can go over and set it in the Postman. And depending on whatever environment we have, we can just switch to that particular environment, and all the requests will get reverted to that particular environment. So this is why environment will be used.
Clear, Ramesh.
Okay. And then we have something called a collection variable. So this is also quite simple. So let let me just see. Okay. So collection, to define a collection variable, what we you will have to do. Let me duplicate this, or let it be. So collection variable, just you will have to, these things are just collections, right? The main arrows and the this like this particular project's a collection. You just go over here, right? And just click on this and you will see that there are variable sections over here in the collection. Go to the variable section and just define a name over here. Let's say this is a URL for collection. Okay, and let me just put a value over here. Let me use this. Okay, and just save it. So now this particular variable URL collection can be used for each of these requests only. So we can go ahead and access this URL plus collection. Okay, if we say this, then yeah, it is getting the values, and C stands for a collection. So if we send it, then again, we are getting the correct response. So this is how at the collection level, we have defined a variable and we are using these variables in the collections. Just let me copy the name URL collection. Okay. Okay, now it's hitting the request, and same I will update over here. Okay. So the scope, let's talk about the scope of this collection. I will just save these things first. Okay, now let's talk about the scope. So the collection variable, it will be accessible only to these requests which are defined inside this collection. So if I go ahead and open another collection and try to use this collection variable, it will not be accessible to me. Let's say if I am trying to use this request from a different collection and I am just pasting the variable name over here. So you see it will give an error. Unresolved variable means it's not getting what we mean by this particular variable. And if we send it, and then it's not going to work. So you can see in console, it is not getting the value back for this variable. So the scope of a collection variable will be limited to just the requests which are defined inside the particular collection. So is it clear, Sandhya, for this?
So clear,
No.
Avinash.
Scope is within the collection itself. Can't be used by other collections. Can't be used by other collections. So these things are generally important for the interview perspective. So you should have a knowledge of what these variables do and what is the proper scope of these variables. So can't be used. Okay, just try to get these things like scope is within the collection and can't be used by other collections. So now we have something called a local variable. So local variable is also the scope is very limited. So let me just use a local variable. So local variable is just limited to individual request. Let's say if we are hitting this get user, then if we create a variable in this particular request, then that is called a local variable. So it will be just accessible to this particular request and not to any other. So this is what a local variable is, and write it that scope is defined or scope is limited till the request. Can't be used other than the request in which it is it is defined. Okay, and then we have our data variables. So I will just give a quick where we use this data variables. So just let me save this. Okay. So whenever we go to run a collection, right? We check the collection and click on basically run the collection, right? Then here we have a section called data where we can select and we can use some files. So basically in this particular data section, we can use some of the CSV files or JSON files and we can drive our APIs with those data. So basically it is used for data driven testing, which we will have a look into the further session. So in those case, whatever the data we take up from the CSV or the JSON file, so those are called the data variables. So you can say that these variables are used to do data driven testing. So have you done data driven testing, Sandhya, anywhere in Postman in your uh,
No,
okay,
Postman I have not done.
okay,
In automation using REST assured, I used to do this scenario outline. There I will
okay.
pass the data or I'll keep it in the property file.
Right, right. So, whatever the file we define no, with all the headers and all the data, so those are called the data variables. And once in Postman, we just go to the collection and here we upload that file in the and it will get all the data and then we will somehow use these data in the request to
Okay.
do a data driven testing. So then those variables are called you can say data variables and the scope for those variables will be till the collection. So this collection will be able to use whatever data which we have uploaded over here. So I will also write this. Scope is valid till the collection. Okay, so this was data. And now let's see how we can do API chaining in Postman. So any queries around these things, Sandhya? Like I will once check for this local thing, like
Okay.
why the script is not running as expected. Uh, Other than that, you are kind of having an idea, like why we use the
Yes.
variables and what are the different types of variables and what is their scope. So this is important from the interview point of view.
Okay, sure, Avinash.
Yeah.
I'm clear on this, whatever
Okay.
you
Okay. Okay.
explain.
So now we will let's do one thing. I will take the API chaining part tomorrow. I will just cover the curl in Postman for today. So this is a short topic and it will get cleared in today's session. So
Okay,
I will
sure.
just remove from here and put it over here. Let's say curl in Postman. So it's a curl or cURL, anything which you can say. So let's say what we have over here. So if we have any request, so this is one of the formats. Like we have a URL and then we have a body, and this is one of the formats of a request. But what you can do is that you can just go to any request, and here we have a section called code in Postman. So once you reach any request, you can just navigate to the right side and you will have a section called code. Just click on that particular thing and you will get a code snippet. So these will be the different options which you will get. So if you select the curl, so what will happen is that Postman will create a curl command or a curl. Just let me open a notepad. So what Postman we will do is that it will just curl, or it will just you can say restructure the response into this particular one liner format, you can say. So this is nothing but the curl. And what where curl is used, it's basically used in the command lines for execution. So let me note it down over here. So in development, what happens now, sometimes the developers will not share you the APIs in this format. They will not share you like the URL, the endpoint, and the JSON body. So they will not share you in this format. What they will share, they will just share a curl command. So something like this. They will just provide you this. So from here, it's quite complicated. You won't be able to get what is the link, where is the body. So this is a curl. It's compacting everything into a smaller piece of code. So this is a curl command, and basically it's used for command line of execution. So whenever we do something from the command prompt, uh, basically we kind of wrap all the body and all the headers into one thing, and that is what is called as a curl. So let me just write the steps to convert any request to curl. So first, just know it is a compact format for any request. Okay. And it's generally used for command line. So command line execution, you are aware, like if we want to run the Postman, not from the console, right? But if we want to run it from the command prompt, then that is called a command line execution. So in those cases, generally curl is used. And let's see what are the steps to convert any request to curl. Simple, like just go to the request. We have already seen, I guess, over here. Just go to the request, and on the right side, just go to this code section, and then it will show you the code snippet for curl. Just copy it. And let's say if a developer shares some curl with you instead of the request, instead of the general format, right? Instead of the header, body, and those things separately, he just combines it everything and shares it the curl command to you. So how you can get the proper format back? So for that, what you will have to do is that we can just go to Postman, go to import, and here you will just need to paste the curl which you have received from the development team or anywhere. So you can just copy this and just paste it over here. And then you can see that it has already extracted the things from that particular curl. So it got to know that it was a post method. It got the URL or the endpoint, and it also got the body. So headers, everything from the curl. And basically now you can just go ahead and save this particular API. It will just ask you where you want to save the particular request. So you can just save it over here, or you can just create any new collection. Let's say I want to save it in a variable demo. Just click it and save it. So you will get the proper request format back. So this is how you can generate a curl, and basically if the developer provided you some curl, you can get the proper request format back into your Postman. So are you clear on this, Sandhya?
Yeah, clear, Avinash. Now, because I used to see this curl commands in Confluence page, they will be pasting it,
Yes.
but later on they will be sharing. But now I got to know how to convert, how to import.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so curl is to share all these things. It's quite spacious, right? If they want to share the all the request response headers in a standard way, it will take a lot of columns. So
okay.
this curl is somewhat wrapped up, right? Everything we have in
Mm,
place, but it's not easy to understand. So basically,
mm,
you can just copy the curl, go to import, paste the curl,
mm,
and it will just unwrap all the things, and you will get the
mm.
request back into your
Mhm.
Postman. So this is one method.
Yes,
So
yes.
so in interviews also they might ask you, have you worked
Mm.
on curl commands or not? So basically this is nothing but curl. It's the same thing. The curl command or the APIs are same. Just we should know how to convert any command back to curl and how we can convert the curl back to the normal format. So that is
Mm.
important.
Okay. Yeah, clear.
Okay. API chaining we will discuss tomorrow, and then we have data-driven testing and authentication in Postman. So these topics will be left, and I think apart from that, majority of the things will be covered, Sandhya. So we will have a look at one. There is one document called Swagger document, so that we will have a look into what that document is and how we can read through that particular document. And also
Okay.
we will see one thing where we can just upload
Mhm.
one of the collections to Git, and we can use Jenkins to trigger that build and generate a report. So that will kind of wrap up everything in the Postman section.
Okay.